All right, thank you, Mr. Ricker. So, Mr. Hagan just asked you a few questions about data, and you recall those questions. Data is, just to be clear, so that's different from, we're talking about something different than when you make a telephone call on your cell phone, right?
Correct.
And something different from when you do a text message on your cell phone.
Correct.
Right? And data is a third category.
Correct.
And that's like these applications that are on one's telephone.
Yes, sir.
But text messages, cell phone calls, and data are supposed to appear or would appear on these documents that we've been looking at, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. I want to show you a video and then ask a hypothetical question. All right, so before you start.
Overruled.
All right, so assume an individual is in this corner here using a cellular device. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You have that in mind?
Yes, sir.
That's okay. Just play it. All right, now assume this individual keeps walking and is using the cellular device.
Objection and assumptions.
Well, I take it it's a hypothetical question. What is the question, counsel?
Now, do you see the? Did you see the time indicated on here? It's 12:40
Yes, sir.
a.m.
Yes. Yeah.
on
Yes. Yeah.
on 7/16/2012.
Correct.
Now that assume that individual on the telephone.
Objection on the telephone.
See you at sidebar.
So if an individual is using a telephone at,
I'm
say,
sorry, do you want that video on or off?
we can.
You want it to be on?
Well, I can ask a. Let me ask the question from the video, Your Honor. Put it up to there.
There it comes.
So looking at the video, can you see what appears to be a cellular device?
Objection.
If you can answer that, you may.
I can't really tell what's in his hand until right now. Earlier I could not, but just now I could. As he walked away, I could see that it was a phone, but prior to that I couldn't tell.
Okay, you can turn that on. I'm going to ask you a hypothetical question. If someone if someone at 12:40 a.m. either makes a call or sends a text message or engages an app on a telephone, should that be reflected in what's been marked as Exhibit 249, all of the usage is from the telephone, a particular telephone?
Can you repeat the question,
So
please?
if someone at, say, 12:40 a.m. uses a cellular telephone to make a telephone call, and AT&T pulls the records of that time and date, should that telephone call be reflected in the records?
Yes, sir.
If an individual at 12:40 a.m. uses his cellular device to send a text message, should that use be reflected in records pulled by AT&T?
Yes, sir.
If an individual at 12:40 a.m. engages an app on his phone and records are pulled from AT&T for that date and time, should the data record be reflected on those records?
Yes, sir.
That's all, Your Honor.
Mr. Hagan?
Just along the lines of the questions Mr. Sullivan just asked, if one were to read a text that had already been delivered, would it show up on the AT&T records? That had already been delivered?
If it had already been delivered,
Yes.
It would show up at whatever timestamp it came in at.
Right. So if I get a text message, or the hypothetical man that Mr. Sullivan talks about gets a text message an hour ago, it'll show up on the phone when it was received an hour ago, not when I open it, correct?
Correct.
So if an individual is walking up the stairs and looks at a text that was previously delivered whatever time earlier, that's not going to show up on the AT&T records, correct?
Correct. It doesn't show when you read it. It corrects when it records it when it comes in to the phone itself.
And if one's inputting a phone number that they just got from somebody, that doesn't, and I don't mean a phone number to make a call, but somebody gave you their phone number downstairs, does that reflect on the network, on the records?
Not unless they hit the send button.
So if they're just putting it in their phone?
Correct.
And if they're scrolling through phone numbers on their phone but not ever hitting the send button, would that be on the records?
No, only when you hit the send button.
So the only things that would be on the records would be calls, texts, and data usage.
That is correct.
And all the other uses of a phone that one does would not be reflected, at least at that time.
Correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Two questions, Your Honor. You recall sending a memo to Catherine Rodriguez on September 23rd.
Counsel, that's beyond the scope, it seems to me.
No, I'll just ask the question. It's a true statement, to the best of your knowledge, that the nightclub located within the old Wilbur Theater may get no service inside.
If you know that to be true,
I don't.
false, you may answer.
I don't. I said that because it was in the basement, and I was merely saying that there may not be coverage in the basement. I think there's a reason why I wrote that.
And if that's accurate, and there's no coverage in the basement, when someone comes above ground, then the text that came through when they were off network would all pop up when they came on ground, above ground, correct?
If the phone, sorry.
You may answer.
If the phone was in no service and it all of a sudden came into service, any text messages or voicemails that are waiting will show up on the phone.
And the time reflected of those messages coming in would be the time that this hypothetical individual comes upstairs, correct?
Yes.
That's all.
Okay, thank you, sir. You may step down. Please watch your step. Commonwealth.
Commonwealth call Sergeant Detective Kevin Witherspoon.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you shall give in the matter now in hearing between the Commonwealth and the defendant at bar shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Watch them have a seat.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Would you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Kevin Witherspoon. My last name is spelled Witherspoon.
Are you a sergeant detective with the Boston Police Department?
Yes, I am.
How many years have you been with the Boston Police Department?
27.
During that 27-year career with the Boston Police Department, Sergeant Detective, can you tell us what areas of units you've been assigned to?
Area A, which is downtown district. I was assigned to Charlestown, C11, and the district attorney's office.
And what is your current position within the district attorney's office?
I'm assigned to the computer crimes lab.
What is the computer crime lab and what does that lab do?
We primarily examine cell phones, but we We extract information, data from computers, cell phones, memory cards, things of that nature.
Sergeant Detective, describe, if you would, what particularized training you have in the area of cellular phone downloads.
I attended the National Computer Forensic Institute, which is hosted by the United States Secret Service. I'm a certified computer forensic examiner through IASIS. I attended a number of mobile phone trainings, Celebrite mobile phone training, Paraben handheld mobile phone training. I attended Access Data Computer Forensics training, In-Case Computer Forensic training, and many more.
And are you a member of any professional memberships?
Yes. One is called HTCIA, and the other one is called MDEC.
And in the course of your career, sir, have you given what's oftentimes referred to as opinion or expert testimony relative to cell phone forensics or cell phone downloads?
Yes.
And in what courts?
Suffolk Superior, Boston Municipal.
And approximately, if you can estimate, Sergeant Detective, in your career, how many cellular phones have you downloaded content, some data from?
Over 1,000.
And other than you, Sergeant Detective, is there any other units or persons within the Boston Police Department that do the phone downloads, or is it just you?
No, there are others.
How many others?
I'm not certain. 6, 7.
So we're going to call your attention now to what technology is available in order to be able to download from a cellular phone. Could you describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what process is undertaken by you to attempt to get data from a cellular phone?
Yes, depending on the device, we use a tool or software. We select the tool or software to extract the information from the device. I don't know how far you want me to go into that.
Well, do you use different software or devices depending on the type of phone or the age of the phone?
Yes, we do.
And describe that process.
The different types of software?
Yes.
We use a software called Celebrite, which is one of the leading tools and software in mobile forensics. We use a software called Lantern, which is an iOS forensic software, and we also have computer forensic software, Access Data's Forensic Toolkit, which is FTK is what it's called.
And Sergeant Detective, despite utilizing the different softwares and devices that you've summarized just there, are there certain cellular phones that are still, even to this day, for experts such as yourself, difficult to get data from or to get access to?
Yes.
Sergeant Detective, I'm going to call your attention now to work you did in particular on this case. First off, when work is brought to you as a forensic analyst of cellular telephones, are you part of the investigation, or is work given to you more in a vacuum of not knowing anything about the case?
Oftentimes, most of the times, we don't know anything about the case.
I'm calling your attention now to, again, this particular case, a cellular telephone that was delivered to you on or about July 17, 2012. Did you later learn that a cellular telephone delivered to you on that date reportedly belonged to someone by the name of Daniel Abreu?
Yes.
Refer to witness, Ron.
You may.
Sergeant Detective, I'm going to show you the contents of what's been entered as Exhibit 163. Do you recognize the envelope inside, sir?
Yes.
And do you recognize the handwriting on that?
Yes.
Whose handwriting is that?
Mine.
And the object inside that we won't touch, does that appear to be something that was submitted to you on or about July 17, 2012?
Yes.
And so the exhibit that I just showed you, a cellular phone that you later learned belonged to a Daniel Abreu, one of the decedents in this case. Is that a Samsung Galaxy phone, sir?
Yes.
And please describe, if you would, what, if anything, you attempted to do back in 2012 and what the results of that attempt were.
The phone has a pattern lock. Once the phone was powered up, I realized that it was locked. The device was locked with a pattern lock.
And for those that might not know, Sergeant Detective, what's a pattern lock on a phone?
When you can create a pattern to unlock your device.
And even when devices are locked, Sergeant Detective, are you still sometimes successful in being able to get around the lock and get data from the phones?
Yes.
In this particular case, without the pattern lock, or password I should say, we were able to get into that phone back in 2012.
I was not.
At some point, did you have conversations with one of the homicide detectives on the case that led you to try a particular pattern, at least as it was purportedly conveyed by the family of Mr. Ray?
Yes.
And what was that pattern, if you recall?
I believe it was the letter Z backwards.
And was that successful in unlocking the phone?
No.
Describe, if you would, sir, what other attempts you made to get access to data from that phone and what the results were.
Well, initially I tried to unlock the device with Celebrite. I was unable to do that. I also attempted to examine a memory card early on, and I was unable to do that. Those are the attempts that I made. We made several attempts, but initially that's what we did.
And is that unusual for a phone of that type, a Samsung of about that year, that you would have difficulty getting access to it, sir?
No, it's not.
Now, you indicated that you did have some ability, I think, to get access to the memory card or the SIM card, is that correct?
Eventually, yes.
And what was it that you were able to eventually gather as far as data from the SIM card or the memory card?
The SIM card, I believe, we were able to get the phone number. Contained, I believe, photographs and videos.
And ultimately, were you able to get at least a partial download, again, as you've indicated, just the videos and photographs as well as the phone number assigned to that particular phone?
Yes.
And are you aware of whether or not you created what's called a Celebrate report that ultimately has all the data, the photos and videos that you're able to download from that phone?
Yes.
Sergeant Detective, I'm showing you a CD. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes.
And does that contain the download that you performed of the memory card and the SIM card of a cellular phone that was submitted to you on July 17, 2012, purportedly from one Daniel Abreu?
Yes.
You're asked that the CD with the download be marked for identification.
Identification. Why?
Yes, sir.
Sergeant Detective, calling your attention now to a second cellular phone that was delivered to you on or about July 17, 2012, that you later learned purportedly belonged to one Aquilino Freire. Was a cellular telephone delivered to you, specifically an iPhone 3G?
Yes.
And were you able to, based upon the processes that you've previously described, gain access to the data within that phone?
Yes.
And what, if anything, were you able to recover?
Just about everything on the device, call logs, text messages, videos, photographs.
And just for purposes of, at any point, if the members of the jury get to view the contents of the cellular phone, can you describe what, if anything, there is as far as the time on that phone? In other words, is it Eastern Standard Time, or is it something called GMT or UTC?
I believe that phone was GMT, Greenwich Mean Time.
And does that mean that you have to add a certain or subtract a certain amount from the time in order to get the accurate time?
Yes, you do.
And what is it based somewhat on daylight savings time?
Yes, between November and March, we are in Eastern Standard Time, so we would subtract 5 hours. In between March and November, I don't have the exact day, we would be in Eastern Daylight. We would subtract 4 hours.
So subtract 4 hours. And if the incident that we're interested in happened in July, that would be between March and November, so you would subtract 4 hours from whatever times are contained on any text messages or phone calls. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And just for the record,
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? Showing you a CD. I'd ask you if you recognize that, sir.
Yes.
And does that CD contain the full Celebrate download that you performed on the phone of Aquilino Ferrer, specifically recovering, as you indicated, all data, photographs, videos, texts, and phone calls?
Yes.
And just for the record on this item, I'm going to write the number -4 and then the word hours. And will that be accurate for any texts or phone calls for July?
Yes.
And I'll put in parentheses July. And Your Honor, I ask that this be marked for identification.
Without objection.
ZZ.
Sergeant Detective, calling your attention now to a third phone that was delivered to you relative to this case. A phone that was purportedly, or at least conveyed to you, belonging to one Gerson Lopes, Gerson Lopes. In fact, on July 24th, 2012, was another cellular phone purportedly belonging to Gerson Lopes submitted to you for analysis.
Yes.
And can you please describe what attempts you made to gain access to the phone and what the results were?
We were able to extract the data from the phone, and we were able to recover content, text messages, call logs, photographs, videos, and more.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Sergeant Detective, showing you a CD. Are you aware of what the contents of that CD are?
Yes.
And is that the full Celebrate download of the cellular telephone of Gerson Lopes that you performed after it was submitted to you on July 24th, 2012?
Yes.
And similar to the last item that I showed you, can you tell us if there's any time difference that one would need to know in viewing any text messages or phone calls on this device?
I believe it's similar to GMT at the same time.
And for the record, I'm placing GMT on the envelope and then -4 hours for any texts or phone calls from July. Is that correct?
Correct.
For the record, I'm placing -4 hours July in parentheses. And Your Honor, I ask that the download of Gerson Lopes' phone be marked for identification.
ZZ. I'm sorry, AAA.
Finally, Sergeant Detective, was an additional cellular phone delivered to you on or about September 11th, 2014, purportedly belonging to one Alexander Bradley?
Yes.
And was that an iPhone, sir?
Yes.
And were you ultimately successful in getting a download of the contents of that cellular phone?
Yes, I was.
Now, prior to getting access to that cellular phone, did you require something in order to do your download?
I believe there was a password associated. We needed a password to get into the device.
And to your knowledge, was the password provided by somebody, either Mr. Bradley or somebody else?
Yes, by Detective McGeisig.
And additionally, Sergeant Detective, are you aware or did you maintain as part of your records a consent form signed by Alexander Bradley for you to do a full download of his cellular telephone?
Yes.
You may.
Just showing you a CD, sir. You recognize that?
Yes.
Does that CD contain the full Celebrate download of the iPhone purportedly belonging to Alexander Bradley that you downloaded the contents and data from pursuant to a consent form from Alexander Bradley?
Yes.
Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd ask that the Alexander Bradley download be marked for identification.
Without objection.
BBB.
Thank you, Sergeant Detective. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, good to see you again.
Good to see you, sir.
A couple questions. So the tools that you used on, well, first, so you attempted to make extractions from 4 different phones.
Yes.
Debrew was one.
Correct.
Freary another.
Correct.
Lopes a third. Yeah.
We don't track by the name, so I'm just a little confused. What was the first name of Lopes? Just want to make sure.
Person.
Yes.
And then Bradley is the 4th.
Yes.
And you mentioned that Bradley's was by consent.
Yes.
He provided a password.
Yes.
Were you made aware that he had been given an immunity deal by the Commonwealth?
I didn't even know who he was. No, I was not, sir.
Let me ask you about the extraction techniques with respect to the 4 persons, 4 telephones. So did you use Celebrite for each of them?
Yes, I did.
Are you aware that Celebrite consistently updates and enhances their capabilities?
Yes.
And since the original examination in 2014, are you aware that Celebrite has updated its capacity 3 times?
Yes. I believe more than that. But it could be 3 times. But there's more I believe there's more updates than 3.
All right, I'll go with yours.
Yes.
So at least 3, but
yes.
maybe more. You were able to extract on 3 of the telephones, right?
Yes.
But the Daniel Debrew telephone, your testimony is that you were only able to do a partial download.
Yes.
And that did not include text messages.
It did not.
Or voicemail.
I believe the SIM card had some older text messages that may have been saved too, but other than that, there were no text messages and voicemails on that memory card.
Did you make any attempts to use, subsequent to the initial attempt, did you make any attempts to use updated versions of Celebrite to attempt to extract data?
Yes.
And were you able to extract additional data with the updated versions of Celebrite?
No, sir.
With respect to Bradley, may I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm showing you a document, Detective. Do you recognize it?
Yes.
What is it?
It's the summary of the extraction report created by me.
And that is for, you can hold on to it.
Yes.
That is for the Bradley telephone.
Yes.
And in terms of the does your form indicate some quantity of data that is or was extracted?
The one you gave me? Or ours does, yes.
Yes, and what was able to be extracted?
Are you asking me to look at my form or what you gave me?
Oh, well, I'm asking you based on this form, but if your form says something different.
I don't have, I think you need to give me a little more than this. This is just page 1, which is just a summary of the, this is just the information about the device itself. I don't have, unless I'm not seeing something here.
Approach. So is there any significance with the
Oh, you're talking about up here?
with the 1,000?
Oh, the pages, yes, 1,011 pages, yes, sir.
Right, so 1,011 pages you were able to pull off of Bradley's telephone.
Yes,
And this is using the Celebrite software.
yes.
Were you made aware that subsequent to that, my team was able to extract 4,689 pages of data?
Yes.
Excuse me. Court's indulgence. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
Hold on one second, sir.
Sorry. Sorry, sir.
Actually, maybe two questions. You were just asked about the expert for the defense looking at the Bradley phone and doing a download that contained 3,000 more pages than your download. Do you recall that question?
Yes, sir.
Have you had a chance to review that report generated by the expert for the defense?
Yes.
And what's the difference in pages? What does their report have that yours doesn't?
Well, first of all, we didn't include configuration files in our report, files that basically the normal person doesn't understand. I shouldn't say that, but we don't normally include them. Let's just put it like that. The configuration files. Also, like as he said, there was a newer technology, so it's not unusual for them to come back with more data. The tools are much more powerful now. Are at parsing through a lot of this different social media applications. So there is a difference in the software that was used, and it's not unusual for more information to come back.
But as far as the configuration files, which you indicated is something you don't usually include in your reports, is that information that's actually contained in other parts of the report?
Yes.
And did you happen to see that the configuration files for their expert report came out to almost 3,000 pages in and of itself?
Yes.
And that's just basically a restating of what's already in your report?
Objection, meeting.
Overruled.
Thank you, sir. No further questions.
No questions.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think that's enough for the day. We're close enough to 4 p.m. that I think it's unlikely we would complete another witness in the next 8 minutes. So we'll all right, counsel, is it my understanding the Commonwealth would intend to call Mr. Nelson tomorrow?
Correct.
All right, well, I suppose it's appropriate that I rule on the outstanding motion.